Previously on
Mochi making terrible life decisions.
I told you that we would rig a model for one of my OCs, or muses as I like to call them, and here we are doing that. One of my least favorite things to do in this is definitely having to, set up the file. And also because I drew like the eyes wrong and not into a complete circle, I tried to warp it, so it warps really funnily. That is pretty much all we did that day. Okay, so episode 2 is definitely going to be a lot shorter. That's just because I couldn't record a lot of footage. But basically that day I was working on like the eyebrows and the mouth. That was the plan for today. Obviously the eyebrows are just really easy to do. And again, I used a tutorial from Yoshino Art in order to rig the eyebrows. I'll leave a link to the tutorial in the description. I basically just used a bunch of her tutorials for this entire rigging process. But anyways, the eyebrows, like I said, really easy to do. You just have to do like the forms, the angles, and whether they went up and down. I removed a few unnecessary parameters because we obviously don't need all the parameters. You can't track them, you know? The brow rigging was definitely different than my main model, especially because I was using, a different tutorial. I used Chupago's tutorial for my brows in the main model. So they moved a lot, differently, but I think that's fine, it worked. So with the mouth rigging, it was definitely painful, but luckily I did a lot more separation than I did with my main model. Because I remember with my main model, I didn't do much mouth separation. I separated the skin with the line, and that was pretty much it. But this one, I separated the lipstick, I separated the shine, and because I didn't do that for my main model, it really screwed me up. So with this one, I noticed that, the mouth, it was a lot smoother of a process to rig, if that makes sense. The only thing is, the mouth wasn't as expressive as my main model, but you know what, that's okay. It works, and I guess it's all that matters, But it definitely took me a while to, rig the mouth. It always does. Oh yeah, and you can see me working on the meshes for, all the stuff. I hate meshing so much, but it's the only way to get anything to move. So, yeah. I hit the lipstick, and then, I obviously started rigging, the shapes and everything. It looks a little funky without the lipstick, but, it is what it is. I'd say, this entire process actually went a lot smoother than my first model because I sort of knew what I was doing, I'm, slowly getting better at all of this, which is really good. Though, I must say, when my trial expires, I'm gonna be really sad. I'll keep saying it, but, yeah. So I was rigging, the top first, for, the smiles. And because I separated the shine, it actually looked a lot better when I, moved it around and everything. It doesn't make much of a difference for the top lip, but for the bottom lip, it does make a huge difference. And again, that was what I did wrong with my first model. See, I'm learning from my mistakes. I made so many stupid mistakes while rigging my first model, but no more. We were trying to have, a smooth rigging, And I'd say it went relatively smoothly this time around. And I actually remembered to rig the lip lines this time. Last time I forgot. Which was embarrassing, obviously. Now, the mouth inner was kind of what I was, worried about when it comes to rigging. I mean, I know it seems simple, but yeah. Normally, you don't move, the top teeth, but I had to move the top teeth just a little bit because it just looked off, and how I drew it was weird, But it's whatever, At least it works and that's what matters. I remember that day I was supposed to do head angles too, but and with the head angles you're gonna see different views of the mouth and everything, but I was lazy. I'm a very lazy modeler and everything, so I just did the bare minimum pretty much. Embarrassing. Oh yeah, here I'm working on keyframes in between. Those always get me. I can do the basic frames, but then the keyframes in between I pretty much forget to do. Sometimes when I'm testing it out, I'll realize I forgot to rig one part to a certain keyframe and I'm just oh man, I gotta do this again. It was a lot of trying to adjust everything, but eventually I got it. One thing to note was the lip skin, it kept merging with the nose, so I had to do a lot of silly little things to make sure it didn't merge. So that was like a lot of using the brush tool and everything, but hey, as long as it turned out okay in the end, that's all that matters. But yeah, just rigging the mouth, rigging the eyebrows, and pretty much after that I would be done with the face, minus the nose, which we rig when we have the head angles and everything. And speaking of the nose, I actually did something different this time with the nose. I created extra nose lines that appear whenever the model turns to like the right or the left, because in my style I normally have that. I would like to say it's semi-realistic, so yeah, I had to have those extra details, but it's like, you know, it's fine. Having details is good. I learned that, you know? You can see me trying to struggle a little bit with the lipstick sometimes, like, you know, I have to like shrink down like the lips because it warps really weirdly. Like, big lips are nice, but oh, so yeah, a lot more adjusting, a lot more trying to figure out what the heck I'm doing. But it was satisfying to see him move, like, you know, at the end and actually work. Again, I pretty much did a lot easier to like adjust now because I separated it. So it can move like, you know, it can move just right with like, you know, the lips and everything. And then finally I had like the lip lines that are like, that I most commonly have with my style. The lip shape lines. I don't know why I put them there. I just think it looks nice and I'm just going to keep it like that, you know? So yeah, it was overall like, you know, again, the mouth went a lot smoother this time around than it did for my first model, and I appreciate that. And then now I had to edit like, you know, the mouth inner, and obviously I did not draw the mouth big enough. And this is where I had to move the teeth, because like, you know, the teeth, it just looked so funky like that, you know? So I just moved it up a little bit. Like, again, I know I probably shouldn't, but I just did it anyways. And yeah, I mean, it turned out okay when I did the final like test and everything, so that's all that matters to me, you know? Never before in my life had I ever had to put so much detail into the inside of the mouth, but I had to for the VTuber models so they can like actually like speak. Because normally when I draw like the mouth and everything in my model, like in my drawings when it's open, I just don't put a lot of detail because we don't pay attention to that. Yep, I'm exposing myself. And then finally, we're getting to the head angles. The head angles was something I was dreading. Initially, I saw this like method to try out for this like head angles to like make things quicker, but then I just gave up on the method. So I just went back to using Chupaco's method, which was like, you know, just auto meshing, using glue, doing this and that, you know? Kind of what I did for my first model. So I would be struggling with like the mesh and everything for a while. And yeah, it was pretty much trying to like figure out what the heck I'm doing. I feel like this part is definitely the most frustrating to watch because it just looked like clearly I just did not know what I was doing. So the most important thing I learned was if it wasn't broken, just don't fix it. It worked. Chupaco's method worked last time for me, so why change it, right? But again, head angles will always screw me up. And when I got to the corners later, you'll definitely see me trying to just struggling with literally everything. But yeah, I just had to keep going back and fixing everything and just like figuring out how to like use these path deformers to like warp the head right. And it just was not a fun time. But after much like frustration, again, I eventually went back to like the method I originally used for my model. Part of me wishes I went with an anime style because head angles would be a lot easier. Like, I don't have to think too much about the shape, if that makes sense, but my style's semi-realistic. So I had to like really so I really struggled with the head and everything. Like, you'll see me trying to like mess around with the warps, like, why doesn't this look right, you know? Like, why does it look so weird? I've drawn this character in a 3/4 view all the time. Now, as I was messing around with this, unfortunately, my program crashed, which was very frustrating. I was not having a blast, like, whatsoever. obviously I wouldn't give up, so I had to try everything again. So I had to like redo the current head angles because like, you know, the program crashed before I could save it. And it was frustrating, I tell you. So yeah, I was pretty much trying to like just redo it again, figure out what the heck am I even doing. Out a little rocky, and I was using the old mesh still, so that played a part in it turning out really wonky. And then my program crashed again! So after my program crashed again, I pretty much had to do everything off camera because I figured out the reason why the program was crashing so much was because my GPU was being overloaded and whatnot. So yeah, you'll definitely see that we skipped a lot of steps here. So now you're gonna see me trying to put everything on the face and just like adjust it. And finally I loaded in like a reference picture to kind of get the 3/4 view right. And I'd have to do like a lot of like editing. Again, it was useful that I had a lot of pictures I drew of this character, so I had a lot of references I could use. Since I separated like the cheek shadow from like, you know, the face, I was able to like kind of do an effect to where the cheek shadow kind of like looks different whenever he turns and everything, which again, useful. I really hated how my angles turned out, in all honesty, but it's probably just, but like my tracking doesn't go fully, and the physics that I would put in later don't go to the full extreme, so as long as it doesn't do that, it's kind of okay. It's just when, you know, it goes to the full extremes where it looks a little wonky. Though I'd say compared to my first model, the right and left angles looked fine, so I would be fine if those went to the full extremes, just not the corners or the up and down. I told myself to work on drawing characters in like those perspectives a lot more, so yeah. But at least compared to my first model, I would say this turned out looking a lot better than my first model, you know? Even if it looked like his face kept morphing in all directions because I don't know consistency, like whatsoever. Part of the reason why I was able to succeed was definitely because of the left and right image, like, you know, that I used as a guide for the eye placement. I didn't have like a specific head guide. A lot of people have like guides of 3D models they imported from Clip Studio, but I didn't necessarily have that. Instead, I kind of just had like, you know, just my other art. Here's where you'll see me use the nose line. I had to do a lot of editing, and I should have made a nose line for the other side, but I didn't, so I had to do a lot of like in-between frames. It was not fun whatsoever, but hey, at least it turned out okay in the end. The model looked great, and we're moving on. But next time I definitely need to make like 2 nose lines, one for the right, one for the left, so we can avoid like this whole crazy looking nose thing, you know? Definitely I could have done better for the nose on like, you know, the corners and the ups and downs, but it was probably the best I could do. I would be moving the nose an awful lot, kind of like shifting it to make it look right, because the nose kind of helps it look more 3D, you know? Like, kind of the parts of the face. If your face angles look a little wonky, just use the nose to maybe fix it. That was my strategy, at least. Not a good strategy. So then finally we went to like having to rig the mouth onto the thing. So obviously it would be like painful, and again, using the facial reference guide that I had, it really did help, though I would go back and like edit everything a lot later. So yeah. I would say the mouth was one thing that looked like really, really wonky at the angles. I kept having to do readjustments after readjustments. Honestly, just seeing him look up and down and all around, it just looked goofy. Maybe because I didn't have the ears and the hair before then. But yeah. There was pretty much like, you know, that day was pretty much just head angles. The XY angles. But just looking back at like the corners, I still very much hate the corners, and definitely how weird the jaw looks. Like, I promise you my art style looks better than this. Like, I swear on it. But sometimes it just doesn't work like that. This is probably why my models end up stiff. They need just very limited movement so they don't look like crap, you know? But this is just me being a beginner, you know? I will definitely get better with time. Even after my trial expires, I do plan on maybe occasionally doing a model, but probably not a full body model, or something as complicated as these ones. Which would definitely make me sad, because I do love seeing the complicated ones come together, even if I constantly complain about how complicated they are. But yeah. So, one of the next things I had to do was obviously rig the ears. Luckily I had everything in the same ear warp deformer, so I didn't have to like rig the accessories like separately, sort of. He has a lot of like ear accessories, a lot more than my main model, which basically had none. So initially I was going to use draw order with this to kind of like, you know, to kind of just make it work or something, but it turns out I actually didn't need draw order because of how I drew the ears. Plus, I guess his bangs will cover up the weird lines, you know? That's good. I would say the ears definitely looked so weird on the corners. They could look a lot better, but again, I guess it's just kind of the best we can do at this point, you know? It's definitely so funny to see him bald like this, but that's kind of what you need to do to rig the face. Oh, and here I'm finally rigging his hair bangs. I kept making mistakes after mistakes as usual. I would say after rigging the hair, his face looked a lot better, you know? It looked very weird when it was bald. Something I did with my main model that I didn't do with here was not have like a hairline that was already attached to the head. It screwed me up later, because like the hairline just kept moving and that's not very realistic. So for him, I drew the hairline directly on the head, and I feel like it made things look a little better, you know? So yeah. Oh yeah, now I'm kind of like rigging the hair shadow and everything. That one was like really easy, but like, you know, I feel like maybe I could have done slightly better, but I'm lazy. I'm a very, very lazy artist. I like efficiency. So now I'm finally like rigging the back hair. I actually appreciate myself for remembering that when he turns his head, he's going to have other tufts of hair in the back. It's not going to be just smooth. So I kind of made his hair look like he had more volume. I feel like you could still tell it looked very like 2D, but it doesn't look as bad as it could have been, you know? Of course, the corners looked weird as usual. They will always look weird no matter what, unfortunately. And the Z angle is always really easy for me to do with the head because you can just like, you know, you just tilt everything back and forth. And of course doing the neck for the Z angle was also very easy, so yeah. After I finished the Z angle, I added like, you know, the physics. So again, I really liked how Chopin had these bouncy physics. It just made the model seem more alive in a way, you know? So yeah. You'll see me do like adjustments to the back hair because some things looked off and I'm just like, okay, let's just try to fix this, you know? Though one thing I should have done was like the bottom part of his back hair, I should have like made it separately and then had like a draw order kind of thing, because when he turned it would go in front of his neck just a little bit, if that makes sense. I didn't do that, but I don't think people will notice how off it looks. I hope. Maybe you guys will notice. I mean, I already kind of told you, so you'll notice anyways, but regardless, I just hope it looks like half decent at least. I still definitely have a long way to go. I've seen a lot of Live2d showcase videos, and their models always looked so good. I just wonder like how do I do that, but I guess it just kind of comes with more practice and just eventually kind of understanding how to make it work, you know? So you'll see me here trying to adjust, like, you know, the demon iris or whatever, because I noticed that things were off. Because I didn't do it for all the keyframes, it has this weird color changing effect. Which at first I was like annoyed. The thing I decided to do for that day was rig the horns, because, you know, might as well just rig all the head accessories that I had. So I made like this side of a horn for it to show whenever he turned it aside because of how, like, you know, perspective works. It looked a bit scuffed, but it turned out okay in the end, so I guess that's all that really matters. But overall, I'd say, like, you know, the day was successful even with my thing crashing, and I'm sorry for the episode not being as long. Especially because, like, you know, again, my program kept crashing, and also there was some things that were happening in real life that really set me in a terrible mood, so I just didn't feel like recording. I just wanted to just work and kind of relax myself and get this done, so yeah.